Hello and welcome to Zerocarbonista, Series 6, The Cow in the Room. I'm Ian Collins, and this is your number one go-to environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. And here's an interesting one, Dale, just to kick off with, really. Normally, your diary is like sort of absolutely chock-a-block. Have you taken a week off this week? What's going on? You've been laying in that hammock?
I've been I've been a few days at Lido, with the grid fairies
It's the
powering the
festival
stage and that.
season, isn't it?
That could be what it is. And I've written an op-ed about Drax for the Guardian, which
Hmm.
is going to land at the end of the week. This subsidy
Yeah.
hoo-ha that's going on. I've got a couple of opportunities coming up at the moment for the rest of the week. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know what they do without me actually
I
for content, especially the Telegraph.
I think that's right. Yeah, rumor has it the paper will close the minute you stop talking, Dale. So that there's a certain power imbalance in that, which is great for you, not so good for them. But there is something that should be mentioned, though, of course, and that is the festival season. And because you mentioned you did Lido, Glastonbury next week.
Yeah, yeah, our
See what I
batteries
did?
are there now.
I'm throwing ahead
I
like
know,
here,
I know.
and we didn't even plan this.
Oh, you're so slick.
Can't help
It always impresses me.
it.
So our batteries are there now, soaking up the sunshine because we've got a big solar array on top of the battery,
Yeah.
and that makes a viable difference. The batteries will be there for 10 days. We can get about 15% of our charge just from them solar panels. But anyway, we're there to power the Arcadia field,
Yeah.
where they have this dragonfly show and stuff like that, and have a party. Why not?
And watch Rod Stewart.
Hmm. I don't know. I haven't decided about that. I do have some speaking engagements.
Yeah, they
I'm
love
going. I'm
you in a
going to.
marquee, don't they?
They do, especially in the Greenfield. We'll be
Yeah,
talking about the Battle of the Beanfield because it's that big old birthday,
yeah, yeah.
and some other stuff. It'll be a mixture of stuff.
And then Rod Stewart.
TBC.
I think Rod Stewart is. I think there's a bit of a tick box in Rod Stewart, isn't there?
I don't know. I don't know what you mean.
Well, he's like one of those things that I might as well see Rod Stewart. I mean, the guy is like 89 or something now,
Oh yeah,
still
maybe I
giving it
will.
large. Still,
I just hadn't even thought about it. I didn't even know he was on. Truth be told,
to be honest, maybe I'm just making it up.
it's possible.
I think it wouldn't be the first time. I think he is on, but I'm sure the producers will check it, and they'll lose all of this section if it's not true.
I hope not.
Well, there might have people jumping over the fence at Glastonbury going, "I want me rod," and that could be carnage. We don't want that. Should we? I tell you what we could talk about that is never carnage. Solar panels. Interesting solar panel story this week.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant story. Out of China, of all places. I said that with my tongue in my cheek, like
Yeah.
that. Because a Chinese company called Longi have unveiled what might be the biggest solar panel yet at 700 watts, but it is the most efficient yet at nearly 30% efficiency in terms of converting the energy of the sun into electricity. When I began in renewable energy, solar power was a hyper expensive exotic technology that had a conversion factor lower than plants. And I thought, well, look, plants have had millions of years, billions probably, to evolve. So it
Mm.
makes sense that we can't make something more efficient than a plant. But hello, this new panel is about 5 times more efficient than a plant. And I mean, it's stunning, actually, what they've done. And, I say hats off to the Chinese.
And the grid fairies will be watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I,
Absolutely. We need the best panels we can get.
I don't want anyone to think that this podcast is sponsored by China, the country, which would be an extraordinary deal to carve out. But our first main story, is actually about Chinese cars, because we can talk all we like about Teslas and goodness knows what else. But I mean, the Chinese are kind of leaving the rest of the EV world crying at the moment.
It's incredible. I mean, the Chinese are doing this across the net zero piece, but the story out today is about cars. Apparently, there are like 16 brands of electric car in China. I didn't know that,
Wow.
but new car sales in China are running at more than 50%, nearly 6.5 million sales of electric cars this year.
Yeah.
To compare that with Europe, it's about 20%. Um, and it's all about the huge focus they've had on charging infrastructure as well as manufacturing cheaper batteries, stuff like that. The very cheapest car from BYD in China a hatchback is £6,000. I mean, that's an incredible price. And the whole story is about this brutal price war that's driving the price down for everybody
Yeah,
and will drive some of these companies out of business. But the very same car in Britain is £18,000.
man
And so
alive.
the price war in China is not benefiting the rest of the world.
That is extraordinary. And of course, there are, you can buy Chinese EVs in this country as well. I don't know if it's the entire choice, but they are for sale.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You could buy the same car in China for £6,000 or here for £18,000. The very same car,
Yeah.
unless, but maybe it's left-hand drive in China. I don't know. Apart from that small difference,
Which is
and so yeah,
fine. You are allowed to do it. It's just a bit weird. Have you ever done it in this country, driven a left-hand drive car, but over here?
I've done it over there in a right-hand drive in Europe, not China.
Yeah, yeah.
But it must be similar.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you're
Yeah,
hardwired to accept,
yeah.
when you go abroad, you're mentally going, right, I've got to adapt to something. But over here, it plays with your mind. You might end up in a bush.
Yeah, if you're lucky, right? That would be getting off light.
That will be getting off lightly. Let's talk about the Chancellor announcing £2.5 billion in funding for fusion power. A
Mm.
lot of people listening who might not be au fait with all the terminology will go, well, firstly, what is fusion power? And is £2.5 billion a lot of money in this context?
Well, that's a good question, that second one. The first one, listen, I'll go super simple on this because that's the only understanding of it that I have. Nuclear fission, the technology we do have in power stations and bombs, is about splitting the atom and releasing vast amounts of energy. Nuclear fusion is about joining them together and also releasing vast amounts of energy. It's been the stuff of promise and science fiction for probably 60 years. All kinds of sums of money have been bunged into it. And the most recent breakthrough was that in a huge room of hyper expensive equipment, a microsecond fusion event occurred that almost broke even in terms of energy in and energy out. And that's where we are with fusion. 2.5 billion is nothing,
Right.
actually, in the scheme of things.
So they've managed a microsecond of energy
Absolutely. And
in
almost
60
broke even.
years.
Almost broke even. Almost got back out what they put in. It's just
You
incredible.
wouldn't want
And
to
if
take
we
that to Dragon's Den, would you?
You wouldn't, would you?
You'd be
Actually, well,
laughed
you'd have
out
a
there.
laugh.
You'd be laughed out of Manchester.
You'd
Man
have a
alive.
laugh. And in
Yeah.
this story, of course, we see another 10,000 jobs promised. I don't know if you've noticed, Ian, but always it's 10,000 jobs.
Every time there's an announcement, it's, Alf's opening a news agent in Rill. They reckon it could create 10,000 jobs. Doesn't matter. Is that does that number just kind of auto type whenever you sort of mention certain key phrases?
And it must do. Government money. That's what it is. Government puts
Suggested
money into
phrases.
something
Yeah,
and it spits out 10,000 jobs.
always.
It's, yeah, it's the PR department spell checker that does that
Yeah, I think it
for the
is.
government.
Here's a challenge, Dale. If I give you a headline, see if you can give me a story around the headline. It's got to be topical. Is that
All
all right?
right. Go for it.
Here it is. Right, here's the headline: UK Net Zero Communication Challenge.
Oh, that. It's a lovely story, actually.
Wow, you've got a story on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. There's a lovely story out about that. There's some fella from I don't know, some business has said that actually there's a comms issue around net zero. Obviously, that's not news to any of us. It's super important, but he reckons that the public are overestimating the cost of net zero by something like 14,000%. They think it's going to cost like 25% of our GDP, when
Wow.
actually the Climate Change Committee says it's 0.2%. Now, he's got a point, of course. The communication around net zero is a real problem. You know, we're fighting Farage and Kemi Badenoch right now, and there are claims that we can't afford net zero and green energy puts up bills and stuff like that. He's got a slightly different approach, saying that people are overestimating the impact on GDP, but he goes on amusingly to say people don't understand what GDP is.
Right. So is this a whole story about shit that people don't understand?
Yeah, I think so. It's a whole story about comms and you know how to do comms right. So you know he yeah. So he explains his thing in GDP terms and then says, but people don't really know what GDP is.
Yeah.
And
There
it's
is,
not a
I mean,
good
it is
thing.
fair to say, you just alluded to it. There is I wouldn't say an identity crisis, but there is definitely a public relations gap in net zero. And it comes through time and time again. And you're right. The best example is it's costing us more money. And it's all the extra green levies that are putting up your energy bills and stuff. And it's been, said and proven time and time again. But that one is still out there. And then it's followed by a flurry of others. What's the answer? I mean, people like yourself, we do this podcast, which is huge. You go on the BBC and on Sky. That's great. You write stuff in the Telegraph. So nobody can say you're not doing your bit on this. So who's slacking here? Who do we need to fire?
Maybe it's the government, but don't fire them because we don't know who will get instead. But look, it's a proper serious issue. It's a proper serious issue, actually, of communication. And he's right. It is overestimated, and
Yeah.
people don't understand GDP. And we mustn't be talking always in this kind of language that assumes prior knowledge. He boils it down, and it's a great idea to this statistic. Tell people that it's going to cost £1.30 per week. Right? That's the cost of net zero.
Wow.
Now, how bad does that sound?
Yeah.
The subsidies for Sizewell, by the way, will cost £1 a week, just on its own.
That's just on one thing.
What was it, £1 a month? Better scrub that. I got that wrong. Oh, bad comms from me.
Either way, I mean, that's a very digestible figure of what net zero
That's
will
right.
cost.
That's right, and that's the whole
It's
point.
going to be
Right?
less than you would pay for a cup of coffee, half of what you'd pay for a cup of coffee in one of those high street coffee shops.
I was just saying, a cheap coffee shop, probably.
In a very cheap coffee shop, yeah, at today's prices.
Yeah, yeah. So it's about making it accessible to people, talking to people in terms that they
Yeah.
get. And this is at the heart of this green populism concept. Taking the approach of Farage and people like him, who were very good at talking to
Yeah.
people in a way that they get and they listen to, using language that's accessible, but doing it from a green point of view and say, look, come on, guys, this ain't going to cost a fat lot, £1.30 a week.
There
That's it,
used to
job
be a
done.
few years ago, no longer around, but the journalist Christopher Hitchens, brother of Peter Hitchens, another journalist, Christopher Hitchens, and this is about 20 years ago. I remember seeing this on YouTube. Oddly popped up not that long ago, but he was arguing that he was never quite sure about all of the environmental. The term net zero didn't really exist when he was saying this, but he was a little bit unsure about environmental issues and some of the measures being put in place. But then he became a bit of a convert, and he was selling it on the lines of, "Look, we don't get a second chance," and that was a great way to do it. And he had a very mesmeric way of imparting the message. We literally don't get a second chance, so yeah, you might as well go with this. I think that's a bit redundant now because it still creates a sort of maybe notness. But certainly back then, when people were first talking about things that need to be done, because the planet's as hot as a volcano half the time, and when it's not, it's flooded somewhere. But it does need that kind of thinking, right? I mean, you've just put a great point in about pricing.
Yeah, and actually, there's a story out by the Met Office today that says Britain could face 45-degree temperatures
Yeah,
because of the climate. I mean, that's absurd.
that,
I don't fancy much of that.
no. Well, as my old nan would say, "F me, what a scorcher."
I thought it was going to be me. I just it just popped into my head.
Well, I'm sure that happened as well. Shall we move on to poultry?
I think we should.
There's nothing like a good poultry story.
And this is no chicken shit story, is it? Oh no,
This
it
is
is.
no chicken shit story.
It
This
actually
is
is a
a
chicken shit
poultry,
story.
a poultry mega farm. They have these in the States, these mega farms. There are so many chickens in these mega farms, and they're living in like literally the size of themselves, cages. There's so many, nobody could ever count them. Even the farms themselves can't really account for how many there are there. It's just ludicrous. Acres and acres and acres of chickens. And that kind of mega farm thing, although there are some around, seems a bit contagious to people who really don't give a toss about chickens and welfare. But this is a good news story because there was plans for one, and now there's no longer plans for one. It's been halted.
Yeah, and it is actually a chicken shit story,
Yeah,
actually, because it's all about chicken shit. And a campaign group, River Action, they're called, won a court case today, a judicial review of Shropshire Council's planning consent. I think it was for a 200,000 chicken farm
wow.
somewhere along the river in Shropshire. And And they lost because the judge had said that the county council lost because the judge ruled that they had been defective in their approach to granting planning consent. They had failed to take into account cumulative impact. So there's not just one or two mega chicken farms already in Shropshire. There's like loads of them. And the judge said, actually, of course, you have to take into account the fact that you're adding to a current problem. And the second thing he said was, and you have to take into account where the chicken shit goes, actually. Even if it goes to a biogas producer, you've got to take into account the waste from that project as well. It all ends up in the river somehow.
Yeah.
So for those two reasons, he threw it out. And it's a major decision because it will affect factory farming decisions now up and down the country. And it's a brilliant thing. And by the way, right now in Shropshire, to give you a sign of how bad it is, there are 65 chickens for every single human being.
That's just chicken shit, right?
That's a lot of chicken shit.
I mean, there's more chickens. I mean, I love these stats. There's more chickens. There's not just more chickens in Shropshire than people. It's 65 to 1.
Yeah.
That's a shed load of chickens.
It is.
No pun.
No pun.
And 65 chicken. I don't know what the population of Shropshire is, but it's more than 7. So 65 chicken. But that's genuinely a lot of manure, right?
That's right, and that's what it's all about. That's why I said this is a chicken shit issue, because the big issue, it ought to be about animal cruelty, welfare, all that kind of stuff, but it's not. What these chicken farms have fallen over environment issues, and the lack of proper consideration for where the waste product of the chicken farms goes.
Unreal.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and it sets as you rightly said, it sets a legal precedent as well. And once you've got a legal precedent, then there's a kind of knock-on effect. One hopes. Yep. Shall we do some questions, Dale? Because we've got some little peaches out there today.
I haven't looked at them. I'm excited now.
Always got some beauties. Charlie Victor, which sounds like a kind of police number plate language. Charlie Victor on email says the BBC article talks about all the money spent to compensate wind farms in the north when their power is not needed, whereas gas-fired power station near London has to be used to provide electricity. My suggestion is to use shipping containers filled with batteries to be fully charged by the wind turbines in the north and then physically driven by road on the back of long-haul electric container trucks to the south where the electricity can be used. He hasn't finished yet. He says, once the container's batteries have been discharged, the trucks can then take them back up north and the process continues. So the money paid to compensate the wind farms can then be paid to fund the operation. Can you see anything wrong with this idea? Love the podcast. Always look forward to Fridays, says Charlie Victor.
Nice. Well, look, he loves the podcast, so I have to be kind, not cruel here. There are far more effective ways to move electricity around than in batteries on the back of a lorry, backwards and forwards the length of the country. And it's pylons. We just need some more pylons. So what we're missing up north is enough infrastructure to bring energy down when we have a certain surplus. At certain times the grid has too much energy on it up north, and you can't get it. There's a bottleneck. That's all it is. So we need some more pylons to ease the bottleneck. London has always needed the same amount of power. I mean, it goes up every year, but it's flatlined recently. But what I'm trying to say is the gas project was always going to be running. It doesn't run because the Scottish wind farms are constrained. It was always going to be running, and it won't run if we can get the power down from Scotland. But if we do it with transmission lines, we've got losses of maybe 3% or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. They're very manageable. But the energy consumption in trucks and battery charging and discharging and all that kind of stuff would be far bigger. And it'd be a really lengthy process as well. When you need electricity, you need it like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's a bit of a problem. But look, the other answer is when we have too much energy up north is to turn it into hydrogen. Don't turn the wind farm off. Just split water with it, store the hydrogen. And then when we have a slump in energy production, we can turn the hydrogen back into electricity. Or we can put it in the gas grid to reduce the amount of fossil fuel in there. We're allowed up to 20% hydrogen in the gas grid, so that's cool. And we can use it for heavy industries as well. I mean, the whole idea of a hydrogen economy is based on making vast amounts of hydrogen. What better time to do it when we've got an abundance of renewable energy?
Yeah, it's almost like you've looked into this stuff now. You should do this for a living.
I should.
This question came up on YouTube. Somebody was watching the podcast on the YouTube channel. So for those who only listen to the audio version, there is a visual version of this on YouTube, Zerocarbonista, check it out, etc. But somebody here says, looking at they're interested in the motorbike in the background. They say it looks like a 1970s 250 BSA Triumph Ducati street scrambler. What is it, Dale?
Triumph Ducati, I think they covered a couple of different bases there. It is a Ducati Street Scrambler. It is a 450 single. It's a motorbike I've had since the early 80s, actually. And I think it's a 1976. It's a P-Reg, the old original first time around the alphabet, P-Reg.
Wow. The first time
And
around the alphabet. Do you
yeah,
still ride it?
I haven't done for a little while. I'd say probably a couple of years. It's very old.
Yeah. As are the legs.
The legs of what?
Well, I was really thinking of your own. You know,
Oh, mine, yeah.
These things are not the most comfortable ride. Was the point?
Oh, well, the thing about these 450 singles is, and particularly this one, is a leg breaker when you're starting it if you get it wrong. It's quite incredible.
Yeah.
I did think of converting it to EV, but the thing is, it's a beautiful machine. Maybe I'll orientate it the other way for the next show.
That's got museum written all over it.
I nearly gave it to the the bike museum in Birmingham, but then I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I thought of converting it to EV, but I didn't want to kind of wreck the kind of engineering beauty of this machine.
Fair enough. This from Kevin Hughes on Insta. This is reference calls for a wealth tax. 24 billion quid could be spunked up his words, up the wall on vanity projects and backhand government contracts. Why not focus on cutting out the waste before taking more of people's money?
Well,
I think the point is you'd get more money if you cut waste than you would in trying to tax a few rich people. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, my counterpoint really is it's just 20,000 people, and it's just 2% of wealth over £10 million. This is some money they won't even miss, right? If it fell out of their pockets, they wouldn't even miss it. And yet it's 24 billion that we can spend on so many really important things and help so many people in our country. 5 million kids in our country in poverty. And there are millions of families who can't feed the kids. Kids go to bed hungry. There's a million. I met Gordon Brown last week, as we mentioned, and he told me there's 1 million kids every night in our country that don't have a bed to sleep in.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, we need to fix that stuff.
That was not meant to be the 21st century story, right?
Nope. No, it was not.
And here's one from Alan Griffiths on Facebook. How much more wind and solar generation does the UK need before electricity prices can divorce gas? I keep asking this question and find nobody offering comments. It's a great question.
Yeah.
There's got to be a point when it's completely prolific and there's no requirement for gas.
Yeah, so DESNZ have a plan that looks a bit like that. By 2030, we get to something like 95% green on the grid and gas plays almost no role. But actually, under that scenario, they still anticipate gas setting the price 30% of the time. This is what they told me the other week. And this is the big thing we've been banging on forever about breaking the link. Why do we let gas set the price of the wind and the sun? We could try and wait it out until gas never appears on the grid again, or we could just break this link right now and save an inordinate sum of money. 2023 was £43 billion, for example, and 2030 right now, looking, because it's always based on the price of oil, the price of gas. If you look at the markets today, we're talking approaching £100 billion added to our energy bills if we don't break the link, which is like, I mean, it's stupid to keep repeating the same mistake every year.
Yeah. But that's precisely what is happening.
It's precisely what's happening.
Yeah, which is just bizarre, really, isn't it?
So green energy, the answer to the question actually is green energy could be cheaper right now with 50% green on the grid if we break the link.
On that point, Dale, we move to X-Rated Corner. This is the part of the podcast where people who don't much care for Dale Vince and his views like to have a bit of a rant. You ready for these, Dale?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
It's like your favourite bit, I think, isn't it?
I think it might be. I was thinking to myself, actually, today, like, we laughed at people, like, obsessed about my haircut on my clothes. And I thought, shit, I haven't had a haircut for, like, 6 weeks or something. Wow. Nobody's even noticed. They're like, your haircut, your hair's boring, Dale. You haven't had a haircut in 6 weeks.
Well, they've moved on to your motorbike now, so.
Okay.
Be on to that dining room table next. Looks mighty fine to me. So, X-rated corner, James. This was a post about military support to Israel while the country has poverty issues. War is like net zero, says James. It's a way of taking national wealth away from the people and nations into corporations and banks. In order to justify this robbery, the people need to have fear and to be made to believe they are saving themselves and others. Follow the money. I don't know if that's really X-rated corner, is it? I mean, that seems to me to be, a more moderate point.
It seems to be a fairly mainstream rant, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Like a, kind of classic conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's a bit conspiratorial, but it's not
Yeah.
offensive to you.
Oh, no, it's a good point. Maybe he forgot that bit. But look, net zero, the point of net zero is it's going to make everything cheaper for us. It's going to make the air cleaner and all that kind of stuff. It's going to create a better world. That's the whole point of net zero. I'm not sure people have said that about wars, but I guess they get fought for freedom and liberty, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But right now, of course, Iran is fighting a war for the sake of it because it just wants to destroy its neighbors. So I don't know where to go.
It turns out it was X-rated corner. He says, P.S. Who cut your hair? The council. There you go.
The answer to that is nobody in 6 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody's cut Dale's hair. This is the real story, and the Telegraph haven't yet picked this up. So it's only a matter of time. Kim Johnson. This is reference a post of a cartoon of Nigel Farage calling for blast furnaces and pub politics. Kim says, can't wait for this climate change nonsense to stop. I don't know if that's reference to stuff people talk about in the pub or just Kim's general voice, but Kim decided to utilize some time to write that.
He also forgot the offensive bit. What's going on X-rated corner? Are they all on holiday?
I know. Well, let's finish with one that's a little bit more, it might be a little bit more tasty. We could do with a lot more pub-level politics. The organic, vegan, bistro variety have failed utterly.
Did you make that one up? Oh, no, there it is.
No, there it is, yeah. I think maybe he's just saying that there's not enough good pub
He's right.
data.
Do you know what? He's right, because this comes back to what we were saying earlier. We need to be a little bit more everyday in our language, right? And we don't need... It's quite well put, actually, the vegan bistro versus the pub level politics. So in our cartoon about Farage pointing to a crowd of Welsh people, get down the mines, boys, you want to, kind of stuff, we talked about pub level politics, where you swill a couple of pints and you put the world to rights. That's what Nige does. And he comes up with, pretty stupid things to say, like we'll reopen Port Talbot, the steelworks. And once those blast furnaces are cooled down, you can't reopen them. You have to build new ones.
Yeah.
You're going to build new ones. You're going to build electric, right? That's the future of steel. That's the whole point. And who wants to work down a coal mine? That's the point of our story and of our cartoon. Yeah. But he's right. We need that kind of language, simple language, rather than complicated stuff. I agree with that.
There it is. What a nice, happy point to finish.
Happy ending.
Yeah, a nice happy ending. Next week, you'll be off to Glastonbury.
Yeah.
But there will still be a podcast, of course, which I think
we're going to do it a day early, aren't we?
We're going to do it a day early.
Nobody's going to know because it'll be seamless because we're such a slick operation, and you can promise it by 8 on Friday morning.
8 on Friday. It's never, ever, apart from last Friday, it's never ever late.
That was not the first time.
But no, that's true. But we did have a post-edit issue, didn't we, last Friday? We added something back in and got the team of editorial gremlins working on it like mad overnight.
Yeah, and we only recorded it on a Thursday. It never helps.
That's very true. It's all very tight. Dale, enjoy Glastonbury. Well, no, I'll speak to you before you go to Glastonbury, so that's a silly thing to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, never mind.
Let me do that again.
It's Dale, okay to say silly things. It's okay.
All right. Dale, enjoy Glastonbury. No, we're going to speak before then, aren't we? So, this diary. Have a good week, Dale. Speak to you on the next one. Cheers. And don't forget, of course, you can follow Dale on social media, twitter.com or x.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and on the TikTok too.